Before we get started, this video is a request from one of the wonderful Subscribe Star Bros. It's time to cover the next step in the Apocalypse Trilogy, and not gonna lie, this video was the result of a ton of debate, because the last two movies are extremely good, very good, one might even say, pretty good. Yep, In the Mouth of Madness. So while this is the second video in our dive into the Apocalypse Trilogy, In the Mouth of Madness is actually the last movie, coming out in 1994, and it serves as sort of a culmination of Carpenter's career, since he's been known as a 70s to 80s director, and it's a swan song to his age of horror now that the 90s were in full swing, and the horror genre will be taken over by things like Scream, a new generation of horror and slasher. Some very good, others complete trash, but In the Mouth of Madness is one hell of a movie. Easily one of the best in Carpenter's catalog, especially since it's one of the more personal films for him. As stated in the Prince of Darkness video, John Carpenter is a massive H.P. Lovecraft fan, something that influences a lot of aspects to his films. Incomprehensible threats, body horror, people going insane, all are staples for a Carpenter movie, and In the Mouth of Madness is just an explicit tribute to Lovecraft and cosmic horror as a whole. It adapts elements from a lot of his stories, most famously Shadow over Innsmouth. Now, I love this movie, but there's a reason why I put it just below the actual king of the trilogy. That reason? I flipped a coin. I'm not even kidding. I actually flipped a coin. The Thing is still my personal favorite, but In the Mouth of Madness is something I can fully understand if somebody wanted to say it's their favorite Carpenter movie. It has a lot going for it. The story follows an insurance investigator known as John Trent, played by the great Sam Neill. He's a lovable cynic whose job is to look into claims and point out fraudulent assholes. He's good at reading people and knows how to spot the bullshit. He lives his life in a very objective manner. The truth is out there, and you can find it with just a little bit of digging. One day, he gets a job to look into an insurance claim by a publishing company that says their top talent has gone missing. The acclaimed horror author, Sutter, who has written a series of books infamous for affecting his less stable fans, turning them into rabid, violent cultists that spout cryptic messages about something coming. As the investigation continues, Trent discovers that Sutter might have run off to a town that was thought to be fictional, known as Hobbs End. Once he arrives to town, the already strange happenings around him escalate, and he discovers that Sutter's novels might be trying to break into reality. So this movie's plot is kind of thin. It's a very simple premise of just trying to find a guy, but the way it's told is really special, as the focus is 100% on the surreal sequences and building dread. You know something terrible is coming, mostly because of the in media res intro where we see Trent ends up in an insane asylum, but also that it's pretty open about a lot of the goings-on around Trent. We see society devolve while John is just passively ignoring all of it and only focusing on his job. There's news reports of violent riots, the streets are dirty and covered in trash. Sutter fans are growing more violent as they wait for the release of the new novel, In the Mouth of Madness. There's something very wrong going on in the background of the film, and it creeps its way to the forefront on occasion. The tone is one of the best aspects of the whole movie, able to keep you on board and feel how the whole movie is just building up to something that could never have ended well. And the ending is one of the biggest gut punches to a horror film, only really topped by The Mist. It's very satisfying in that classic horror story kind of way, just beautifully ironic. And a lot of you that haven't seen the movie probably at least know the ending. It has since been taken and used as a meme on the internet, and a lot of you probably recognize it from Mr. Medicare's Internet Insanity series. Yeah, that's the ending to In the Mouth of Madness. Now, while Sam Neill steals the show, I will say every performance in the movie is good. Julie Carmen plays Stiles, an editor that joins Trent on his journey to find Sutter, and she is pretty much the second protagonist. A great character starting off as a professional hard-ass that clashes with Trent's more sarcastic nature, but when things take a darker tone, she is noticeably rattled. She's losing her facade, and is quickly consumed by the insanity around her. And honestly, I think that's where her best acting comes in, where she has to play into this completely broken and psychotic version of herself that clashes with how put together and rational she is in the beginning of the movie. She's not screaming her head off or acting like that one chick from Possessed. No, she's more quiet about it. just accepting what's happening and still losing herself in the process. I have to give her props. Now, with Prince of Darkness, I disclosed that it didn't really scare me. It had cool ideas, but just didn't live up to a lot of Carpenter's other movies. The reason I say that is because In the Mouth of Madness is a million times creepier. Hell, I'll go so far as to say that it's probably one of his scariest movies since Halloween. There's just something about In the Mouth of Madness that gets under my skin, mainly because it deals with more concepts of Lovecraft than just tentacle monsters. It explores themes of what makes reality fiction, and if fiction is something made up or channeled by entities using humanity for something sinister. You even have some disturbing implications of fates worse than death. Once they actually arrive in town, you just feel how unnatural and unwelcoming the townsfolk are. They're not even trying to hide the fact that Trent and Styles don't belong there, and they stepped into something that's out to kill them at best. Just getting to the town sent enough red flags to make it clear they need to start running as fast as they can. The driving scene is one of the moments that really gets to me. Maybe it's because I do a lot of driving at night, but just the entire idea of running into some ghostly figure all alone on the road as you're passing by in the pitch black really unnerves me. Especially how the scene ends where it's made abundantly clear that kid's not human.
Just don't move, he'll get a blanket. Lie still.
I can't get out.
Don't move.
You won't let me out.
Something about this sequence just gives me chills. It's really effective. Another one that gets under my skin is the hotel owner. At first, she just seems like a weird old lady, funny enough played by Frances Bay, who a lot of you recognize as Mrs. Tremon from Twin Peaks. Another weird old lady, but no, there is much more wrong with her. Also, Charlton Heston plays the owner of the publishing company, Jackson Harglow, which is pretty fucking based. Also, I do have to amend the Prince of Darkness video a bit. I thought Donald Pleasance's role with Carpenter before the movie was Halloween. Turns out he also played the president in Escape from New York. For some reason, I completely misremembered and thought the president was played by Gene Hackman. Maybe because the president in Escape from New York is a sleazy asshole and Gene Hackman was great at playing those. Still, it was Donald Pleasance, so yeah, I fucked up.
You also said In the Mouth of Madness came out in 1992 instead of 94.
Regardless, In the Mouth of Madness is a very solid story, regardless of how surreal some of the scenes can get. A lot of the elements that are introduced play a part of the larger picture in some way. From the nightmares about the police officer mutating each time, the weird encounter at the bookstore where Sutter Kane fan says that he sees you, the psychopath that tries to kill Trent with an axe. There's a ton of setup and payoff to the movie, even if it can be vague. I do want to talk about the movie more in depth, so spoiler warnings for In the Mouth of Madness. It's a mystery film, so saying too much right off the bat can ruin the reveals for a lot of people. Definitely recommend you guys sit down to watch before going any further. It's a trippy masterpiece. So the actual story of the movie is that Sutter Kane is writing a new book. Yeah, that's what's going on. The entire plot of the movie is a story Sutter Kane is coming up with as he's being influenced by dark and eldritch beings into writing a novel that allow the creatures to break into our reality. And their influence is seeping into the world and corrupting mankind. The reason Sutter Kane's fans are losing their minds and transforming is because the books are essentially portals for the Elder Gods. They can take over the minds and bodies of the readers. The creatures need the readers to become fanatic for Sutter Kane and his novels, to use their belief as power to will the creatures into our realm. Sutter Kane's novels aren't just popular, he's sold over 1 billion copies and slowly becoming a full religion. A religion with more members than any other on the planet, all reading, all believing, all willing his works into reality. The man who attacked Trent in the beginning of the film was the agent of Sutter Kane. He read the novel, which is the plot of the movie, and knew that Trent would try to track down Sutter Kane and bring his new novel to the publishing office, which will bring about the end of the world. So he attempted to kill John but was shot dead by the police before he could. So John was able to be Sutter Kane's puppet and stumble his way into Hobbs' End, where he would find Sutter, get the manuscript for the novel, and cause the apocalypse. Something that John constantly tries to fight against, insistent that he makes his own choices and isn't being controlled, but he's hopeless. The entire plot's been written beforehand, and he can do nothing. Worse than that, but the end reveal is that not only is everything around him a novel, but the movie itself is the movie. They made the film adaptation, and that's what we're watching, spreading the influence of the novel further and mutating everyone who watches it. And the only one who knows what's actually causing all of this is Trent. The rest of the world had no idea Sutter Kane's stories are the cause of the rising violence and insanity. The only one who does know the truth is powerless to stop the extinction of the human race, broken down and faced with the realization that in less than a decade, the world as he knew it will vanish for good. It's an abyss of horror that you can't look away from or do anything to stop. We see a small-scale version of what Sutter has planned in the town itself. completely corrupted and unrecognizable, full of homicidal monsters and broken down, psychotic townsfolk fighting desperately for any chance to stop Sutter and the corruption he spreads. One of them even desperately begs Trent to get out before Sutter forces him to commit suicide. John's biggest flaw in this entire story is his stubborn pride and refusal to admit what's going on, refusing to accept that he's playing exactly into Sutter Kane's plan. Even when he's encountered clearly supernatural phenomenon that can't be more obvious, he's still trying to find the scam, to explain it all away and not accept the horrifying truth. It's a really great arc, and Sam Neill's performance really sells it. Another standout scene is the one on the bus, where Sutter Kane torments Trent by turning the whole world blue for a moment just to mess with Trent's head.
Did I ever tell you my favorite color was blue?
The sheer guttural scream is enough to show how much Trent is losing his sanity, forced to realize that Sutter is on the level of a god and is out to fuck with him. He's already won. Right now, he's just plucking the legs off a spider, even going so far as writing Styles out of the story and making it as if she never existed, even though Harglow was the one who introduced Styles to Trent in the beginning of the movie.
Linda Styles, John Trent. Linda reads books for a living. Styles, oh, that's the girl you say I sent with you, did it?
Not only that, but he wrote it to be that Trent brought the manuscript to Harglow over a year ago. The movie's coming out next month, and it's the best-selling Sutter Kane book in history. All of this just to mess with Trent. Trent went through so much horror and madness, all for Sutter Kane to write it, so it was completely pointless. The realization shatters Trent, who winds up a disheveled homeless man much like the agent that tried to kill him in the beginning. He even commits murder himself, chopping one of Sutter Kane's fans to death with an axe, which is why he was taken to the asylum from the beginning of the film. And I think as one last fuck you from the author, a horde of mutants attack the asylum and slaughter everyone except Trent, who wanders his way through the ruins of civilization, a voiceover from a radio talking about how Sutter Kane's fans have grown in number enough to overthrow entire cities, mutating into monsters and killing every normal person they see. Every city's going quiet, and the rest of humanity's forced to run into the countryside in hopes of escaping the monsters. Trent goes to a nearby theater which is showing the movie for In the Mouth of Madness. He sits down to watch the film, and it's all various scenes that we've seen earlier, confirming everything was set in stone. It was already written. There was nothing he could have ever done. So he just breaks out laughing, just laughing hysterically, fully given up, and even giving into despair as he breaks down in tears, closing out the film. As stated, the ending is pretty damn iconic. It's such a great fuck you as an ending. It fits the hopeless Lovecraftian vibe to a T. What I like about it is just how downright malicious the ending is to Trent. Not that he's an asshole or really deserves what's happening to him. I mean, yeah, he's a dick, but you never see anything that makes you outright hate him. But you can tell how much Sutter hates the guy, and the fact he was chosen to be one of the last humans left untouched, who's forced to watch the downfall of his species. I mean, there's just outright pettiness involved with how much Trent suffers, and seeing him still try to find a way to stop Sutter Kane throughout all of it is compelling. But he's not anyone that ever had a chance of stopping the apocalypse. He's just some guy who was unlucky enough to be written by the biggest asshole in the world, and he's the unknowing tool that causes everything. Another thing I love about this movie is that you never really find out what the creatures are. They're talked about with vague descriptions, but you never get a single name of any of the creatures. Even when they're revealed, you only see quick flashes, glimpses of some admittedly very impressive creature designs. And while they stick to the classic squid-faced monster that a ton of other Lovecraft movies have done, the way they're handled really sell the dread. You're not allowed to see the full beast. And they're not the only ones you get. The old lady monster is another freaky as hell sequence, mainly due to the lighting and sound design. It sounds utterly inhuman, and it's mostly kept in the shade. It's definitely something that you would imagine as a kid during a dark night, just some primal fear that immediately unnerves you. There's more to the creatures than just freaky monster. I mean, there's a technique around how they're revealed and how much they're shown. You never see a single one really kill anybody or break through a wall. The closest you can think of is the scene in the basement, but that's the only one, and it's more along the line of the brief flash mentioned earlier. You're not scared of the creature because they can rip your arm off, you're scared of what they represent, of the unnatural warping the natural. These things shouldn't exist, but here they are, and the very land around them rots because that's what they do. Giving these things a name or a lore dump kinda ruins the point. They're unknowable and do not care to explain themselves to mankind. Only Sutter Kane knows what they are, and even then it's just more of what they want. What they are, what they can do, and what the ultimate goal is once humanity is dead is left unexplained, because the best Lovecraft stories aren't really supposed to explain anything. Sure, in retrospect, a lot of the mythos is explained, and we have names for stuff like Cthulhu and Azathoth, but the best Lovecraft-style story just gives you enough info to know what's going on, and keeps you in the dark for everything else. Since explaining everything ruins the point of cosmic horror that we are small specks of dust in the larger universe. But In the Mouth of Madness is excellent at this. The journey feels large and epic for John, but in the grand scheme, he was just the useful idiot you send to open the door. His part doesn't really matter. It could have literally been anyone else if Sutter Kane wanted it to be. Hell, Stiles was right there next to him. It could have easily been that she was the one to open the door for everyone. But because we've been following him, the scale feels massive for us. It's that sweet spot that the best Lovecraftian movies hit, and it's why this one's so fondly remembered after 20 years. Yeah, maybe they lost and maybe it was all for nothing, but the journey getting there felt like this massive mystery to uncover. This massive ball of string that you have fun taking apart and trying to see exactly what everything was. It's fantastic, and it's why this one's so fondly remembered after 20 years. I absolutely love this movie, and you guys should definitely sit down to give it a watch. You might think it's cheesy, and if you can't stick with it, you're gonna think it's convoluted and boring. But if this movie vibes with you, then it will really vibe with you. A lot of people quote it as their favorite Carpenter movie, one of their favorite Lovecraft movies, and some just outright their favorite horror movie. And I feel like it's a deserved spot. It's not my personal favorite, but I can definitely appreciate it and highly recommend it to anyone who loves H.P. Lovecraft and good horror movies. I mean, hell, the title is a play on At the Mountains of Madness. That's pretty fun, and it actually sounds like a legitimate Lovecraft title itself. Until next time, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. See you guys.
Fuck you!
Hey, loser. Do you want a shirt? Do you want a t-shirt? I have shirts now. Look in the description for a link to a t-shirt you can buy. If you don't buy the t-shirt, I'll kill your family. If you don't buy the t-shirt, I'll poison your dog. If you don't buy the t-shirt, you're going to be the only person in town that does not have a t-shirt. Everyone's going to look at you funny. There's going to be social consequences to not having one of these t-shirts. I'm now making express threats of violence against you if you do not buy my t-shirt. I will call the police, tell them how you're not buying my shirt. They're going to plant crack in your house, and they're going to arrest you and then beat you up in a jail cell. Buy my shirt.